It's over. Let's go.
Good evening. Well, this is the continuation of the Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, August 20. And this evening, we're having our public comment, evening public comment session. So we're really delighted to see so many people out for our public comment session. And just to clarify something, we are having at the end of the public comment, we're having an opportunity for commissioners to make some comments. So you don't have to leave when you finish your public comment if you want to hear what the commissioners have to say. I'll also announce that Commissioner Bozovich is excused this evening. He has the opportunity and probably will watch the public comment for tonight as well. And without further ado, I will start calling people up here. Usually I try to call people up in groups of 3. So kind of a rolling list here. So Demetria Hahn, you're making your way to the podium. Very good. And next up would be Camillin Brown, right up there. And so if you're second, such as Ms. Brown, I'd like you to move right up to the front row. That's where the next person up goes. And then Bonnie Wyndham, Bonnie will be watching or even moving right now to the second row. But I'd like to have the second person on deck right there in the front row. So our procedure is pretty simple. We have you introduce yourself and tell us where you live. And then our Vice Chair, Commissioner Buck, will set the timer. She's got the same color-coded timer lights there. And the green means talk, talk, talk. The orange means your 3 minutes is now only down to 30 seconds.
Okay.
And the red is, please don't talk anymore.
Okay.
Okay. And then after that, we get this. We don't need that.
No,
okay. We
don't want to travel down that lane.
Very good.
Right.
Okay. So welcome, Ms. Hahn, and please state your name and where you live, and our Vice Chair will give you 3 minutes.
Okay. Greetings, commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Demetria Hahn. I'm a resident here in Lane County. I do reside in Springfield. And I am here with some of my colleagues from the Lane County Advocacy Committee of Oregon Recovers. We are part of a statewide nonprofit focused on lowering Oregon's substance abuse disorder rate and increasing addiction recovery rate. My colleagues and I are going to take 3 minutes or less here and present you with some relevant data regarding the public health crisis that is addiction and share some personal narrative insights around how this public health crisis has impacted us, your constituents. Then we are going to present you with a proposed draft of a resolution that we would like this body to adopt. We have met with a few of you regarding our resolution and are grateful for the time you've spent sharing your insights and your input with us. Thank you so much. Your constituents here in the audience who are not verbally addressing you are also a part of our statewide movement to call attention to the public health crisis of addiction. We are part of a larger effort here in Lane County and throughout the state, and we hope that this resolution effort is only the beginning of our partnership with each and every one of you. I really firmly and deeply believe that we each have the power of choice, and when we choose to act upon and use this power individually, and then together collectively through the force of this conscious recognition to create with intention, we then become the kind of united front that generates the conditions needed to bring about deep, lasting, meaningful, and life-enhancing change. And I think that's really, in many regards, why we're all here, right? We're all members of this community together. And so I'm here today, we are here today to ask you to resolve both individually and collectively to join with us in this way to help transform the enormous health crisis that addiction has become. We thank you in advance for hearing us today, and we really deeply appreciate your time. We will adhere to our 3-minute limit, and we will be happy to take questions from commissioners here today or during conversations, which we hope will be forthcoming in the future. We are grateful for your partnership in this effort, and as the data will reflect in this matter, this has become a crisis that is really, truly a matter of life or death. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for your public comment. So we'll hear now from Ms. Brown, then Ms. Wyndham, then Terry Morgan. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Kimberlyn Brown. I stand before you as a volunteer advocate in Lane County for the Oregon Recovers Movement. I stand before you as well as a clinical supervisor and addictions counselor for South Lane Mental Health Substance Use Disorders Program. Beyond that, I hold the position of Vice President on a board of directors for Checkered Past MMA Youth Outreach, a program designed to support drug prevention with our youth. I hold the position of Secretary on the board of directors for Stone River Community, a nonprofit organization who sponsors the Wellbriety movement in Lane County. I'm a member of the advisory board for Lane Community College's Human Services Program, and most recently I've been invited to join the board of directors for Safe Haven, a nonprofit program providing housing to women in recovery in rural Lane County. I'm a devoted and active mother and grandmother. I hold healthy relationships. I'm trustworthy, responsible, a productive member of society. I say none of this today for the purpose of shining the light on my ego. I say all of this today for the purpose of shining light on the fact that none of this would have been possible had I given up on accessing residential treatment services. Because what I am also is a person in recovery. A person who used substances in any form to escape and to cope with life. To cope with the life I was handed as a child and then the life I created as an adult. And because I had no idea until I was graced with the opportunity to work on myself that a different life and a different way of coping was even possible. In 2011, facing prison time, none of my children in my custody, having gone against every personal value I believed in, I was at an absolute rock bottom. I began to search for residential treatment services. I called many. All of them explained to me that I would be put on months-long waiting lists and that I was to call weekly to keep my name on the list and prove my determination. All of them told me I would have to have at least 30 days sobriety, clean time, in order to get to bed. I remember thinking, if I could hold on to 30 days clean time on my own, I wouldn't need to look for support. Regardless, I kept calling. I held on to clean time somehow, and 3 months later, I got the call that a bed was available. Today, my life looks much different than it did then. With support, I'm living, breathing absolute truth that recovery is possible. I could not have done it alone. My recovery story does not have to be rare. Today, I work with many who are reaching out for the same support I was seeking 8 years ago, and 8 years later, nothing has changed. Recovery is possible. People want to be their best selves. Everyone deserves the opportunity to recover. My life is dedicated to helping those who seek recovery. Oregon Recovers has dedicated their energy to the same. We need your help. We need your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Ms. Wyndham, Ms. Terry Morgan, Ms. Ashley Frazier.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear us tonight. My name is Bonnie. I actually live in Benton County, but I work in Eugene. I work for the city. I am an organizer with Oregon Recovers and a mentorship volunteer with Sponsors, Inc. I am not addressing you in my professional capacity today. I am addressing you as a private citizen whose life has been deeply impacted by substance use disorders and the difficulty of accessing treatment here in Lane County. I'd like to share with you some statistics on addiction in Oregon and some that are specific to Lane County. In 2016, the Federal Department of Health and Human Services showed Lane and Linn counties as ranking in the top 7 in the state for drug poisoning deaths per 100,000 people. This number does not include suicides related to addiction. 1 to 2 Oregonians die every day from drug overdoses, 5 die daily from alcohol use, and more than 2,100 Oregonians die every year from drug and alcohol use. To give you some perspective, during the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s, Oregon saw 362 AIDS-related deaths. We are seeing 2,100 addiction-related deaths every year. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, even though Oregon has the nation's 4th highest addiction rate, we rank dead last in addiction to treatment, in its access to treatment, excuse me. This one's personal for me. Last year, a friend of mine who lives here in Eugene decided it was time to seek treatment. It took the two of us 6 days, working 6 to 8 hours a day, making phone calls, sitting in waiting rooms, and jumping through hoops to be told that my friend could have a treatment bed in 6 weeks. During that time, my friend was required to call every day at 6 a.m. to be told whether they had to show up for something that day to prove their determination. The unpredictability forced my friend to give up their job. Yes, people with substance use disorders have jobs. If I called my physician today because a chronic health condition had made my life unbearable and was asked to wait 6 weeks or more to be seen, I would find it absolutely unacceptable, and my guess is that you would too. Addiction is a chronic health condition that requires a lifetime of care. We do not ask patients with other chronic health conditions to wait a month or more for treatment. We do not ask them to dismantle their lives to prove their determination to recover. We do not release them from treatment without a plan for follow-up care. And we certainly do not refuse to continue treating them if the initial treatment does not work. Lane County can and must do better for people who suffer from substance use disorders. I hope you each will take the time individually to consider what you can do to improve access for citizens of Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry Morgan, very good. Ashley Fraser, and Commissioner Buck and I debated about the next person, but we'll say Roxana. Ruana. All right. Even better. Okay, so next up is Ms. Morgan. Welcome, and please take 3 minutes after you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Terry Morgan. I live in Springfield. I'm the program director at Springfield Treatment Center, a licensed drug and alcohol counselor, and a steering committee member with Oregon Recovers. I'm on the board of directors at the Jesco Club and an active participant in 12-step recovery meetings. I am a mother of 4 and a Lane County resident. I am also a recovering drug addict who struggled with alcohol and drug abuse for many years, and I am a domestic violence survivor. I was estranged from my family, and my youngest daughter, who is here with me today, was placed in foster care due to my drug use. I was homeless, unemployed, and I used to commit crimes to support my drug use. Before I got clean, I was so malnourished that I was bruised from my ankles to my hips. My hair was falling out, my teeth were all broken and infected. And during my active use, I was in and out of trouble with the law, whether that was police contact due to a domestic violence call or due to being arrested for being involved in a crime. And I was in and out of hospitals for issues related to my drug use a multitude of times. And looking back on it now, I am shocked to admit that not one time did anyone ask me if I wanted help. Through all the years of my addiction, no one said, "Do you want to change? Did you know that there's a way that you can get clean?" No healthcare professional or law enforcement officer mentioned treatment options or recovery. No one offered me a choice to change through all the years of my drug use until the very end when DHS stepped in and placed my daughter in foster care and helped me get into residential treatment despite waiting lists that were months long. I can only guess that this is because of the stigma of drug addiction and that few people seem to understand and believe that recovery is possible. I am here today as living proof that we do recover. I have moved past my addiction and created a healthy, successful, enriching life in long-term recovery. There are people in my life who I love and care about deeply that are here with me today in support, who are also working on their recovery after years of drug abuse. We need to ensure this opportunity is offered to everyone by changing how we as a community address drug addiction, treatment, and recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ashley Fraser, very good. And I'm sorry, I got your name wrong. Ruana, very good. So we'll have Ms. Fraser and Ruana, followed by Pamela Kraus. So welcome, Ms. Fraser.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Fraser, and I work for Emergence Addiction and Behavioral Therapies and their Treatment Corp program. However, I'm here today as a private citizen residing in Eugene, whose life has been touched very closely by the struggle of addiction. I would like to thank those of you who are able to clear your schedules to meet with us. It was recommended by members of this body that we present today to share more information about Oregon Recovers and how we advocate for recovery. All of you have previously received a draft of the resolution we are hoping to pass here at Lane County. It contains the feedback given to us during our time spent with a few of you. Given the data and personal stories about the struggle and triumph encompassed in so many people's recovery journey, we would like this Board of Commissioners to accept this resolution and schedule a work session to finalize it. We're hoping that you all will advocate with us at the state legislative session in February 2020 when the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission rolls out their strategic plan to increase recovery support and access to treatment in Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome Ruana, followed by Pamela Kraus and Jean Olson.
Hi, I'm Ruana Garden. I live in Springfield. I've decided to speak again about community cooling, warming buildings throughout Lane County because I awoke to smoke from the Mount Pisgah fire early Monday morning, blanketing Springfield. It was 2 a.m. These buildings need more than energy independence during emergencies. One, they need an available water supply, and I don't mean bottled water. A ground-sourced water supply that's accessible with a hand pump and either an electric or wind-powered system. Two, there is a need to have supplies of N95 masks for everyone that must go outside during smoke events, as well as an easily cleanable air filtration system for inside the buildings. On the lighter side, the buildings could store a supply of solar ovens to cook food and heat water on sunny days. The buildings chosen to be the community emergency centers need to be seismically upgraded to be prepared. Thank you again for your interest in community climate solutions in Lane County, and again for asking people of faith to speak.
Okay, Pamela Kraus, Jean Olson, Linda Heil.
Good evening. I am Pamela Kraus. I live in Springfield. Housing for people is a top priority. I am speaking tonight in support of creating and proliferating the housing bond. This community needs to address the wasting lives that are going on in all forms that will help as soon as possible. Currently, I pay 69% of my income in rent. That will go up when my rent increase goes in effect in September. And it will be higher if I choose a 6-month lease in hopes of finding a cheaper option. I am fortunate to have housing, and I was within 3 days last summer of not having housing. I had some opportunities during the last year and a half here in community to help some people who are unsheltered, and I want to give you a couple of examples. Midwinter last, and I'm using these examples because they're more farther removed in time, I was walking on a sidewalk one evening and came across a man who was trying to operate a totally dysfunctional wheelchair, which he had been given by a church. He had severe neck and back injuries and could not walk. He had been out camping out Highway 99. Someone had ripped off his wheelchair and all of his belongings. He had nowhere to go. I helped him find immediate services, figured with him what he needed and wanted, and he achieved some shelter and medical attention. And these are not rare events. Another was an elder woman who had been kicked out in the middle of the night before. I met her on a bus. She did not know where to go. She had severe urgent medical issues, and I had the honor of going to the emergency room with her after establishing some housing when she exited that night, and stay with her service animal who had never been without its mom. That was pretty interesting, but we all survived that. Now, both of these individuals had to compromise themselves to get those services. The gentleman chose to tell a small lie so that he could have a space in Buckley because there was nothing else. The woman was promised a bed at the mission twice through me, a confirmation from the hospital. She got there and had no bed for 3 days. Those are compromises which I find unacceptable. I want to thank Heather and Pete for responding when I email you and talk to you about things. And thank you, Joe, for standing up in Springfield last week. We have so much more to do, and thank you for your work. So far as I know, we still have no opportunity for Egan to operate to save lives and form community in Springfield this winter.
Thank you for your public comment. Okay, Jean Olson, Linda Heil, and Pam Driscoll. Welcome.
Thank you. I represent a company here in Lane County that's been working with pesticides since 1896 to build and protect your infrastructure and homes. Very few people know and understand that pesticides and wood preservatives are used to preserve wood to ensure the sustainability of our forests and the safety of our infrastructure. To be approved for use, all wood preservatives must, in the words of the EPA, I quote, show that they can be used without causing unreasonable adverse effects to human health or our environment. Wood is protected from decay, rot, mold, wood-eating insects by putting wood into an enclosed cylinder where the preservative is pressurized into the wood. Then excessive preservative is vacuumed out, leaving the wood sterilized. The preservative is maintained in controlled storage tanks, and any drippage is collected so that preserved wood industry has zero impact to pollinators. We need the safety of preservatives. They protect our wood infrastructure from railroad ties to utility poles to guardrails along freeways and pilings at port. In fact, the very first board installed in every house, the sill plate, is preserved wood. It protects the rest of the lumber and thus protects the house from decay, insects, and rot. It's also much lower in a carbon footprint than steel or concrete, and is local, and it provides jobs for not just hourly production workers, but for all the people supporting the industry. Through preservative treating, we add sustainability by making wood last for decades, far beyond the time it takes to grow a new tree to supply our future needs. This is the essence of sustainability, and no other material offers this benefit. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I also have a written statement I can.
Okay, you can give it to,
Good evening. My name is Linda Heil. I live in Eugene in Commissioner Sorensen's district. Two indispensable first steps are fundamental to getting Lane County's climate action plan off on the right foot. One, establishing a baseline using a greenhouse gas inventory, and secondly, pulling together a community stakeholders team that will assure a just transition to a cleaner future for all county residents. A greenhouse gas inventory serves as a starting place for both planning and measurement. Knowing where Lane County's greenhouse gas emissions are produced will allow the planning team to prioritize goals and set objectives for reducing those emissions. If you're not familiar with greenhouse gas inventories, you might look at Eugene's most recent, which includes a consumption-based inventory and a sector-based inventory, and it's available on their website. Engaging effectively with Lane County's whole community, residents, businesses, governmental and other services, and community groups is the second indispensable step. The UN document entitled Guiding Principles for City Climate Action Planning gives as two of its 10 principles. First, inclusion, quote, involving multiple city government departments, stakeholders, and communities with particular attention to marginalized groups in all phases of planning and implementation. And secondly, the principle of fairness, seeking solutions that equitably address the risks of climate change and share the costs and benefits of action across the city. Certainly, these principles are transferable to county climate action planning as well as city climate action planning. In preparation for community climate action planning, Lane County will build a team of stakeholders to give substantive input to the planning process from the outset. A strong, inclusive, and fair planning team will include representatives of marginalized communities and those most affected by climate change, including people of color, lower-income residents, and youth. Incidentally, these groups also produce far less emissions than do businesses or higher-income residences. And thank you for assuring that the county's climate action planning process gets off to a very good start.
Thank you. Pam Driscoll, Jim New, Stephanie Larson.
Hello, my name is Pam Driscoll. I live in Dexter, and Heather Buck is my representative. I came to speak tonight, about the Lane County Climate Action Plan. Recently, the IPCC released a statement about the importance of changing our diets to mostly plant-based. I would add that how we grow food is just as important as what we are growing food for. Currently, the average item in a conventional grocery store travels over 1,000 miles. This is not sustainable, as vast amounts of fuel is used to truck food over long distances, and most large farming operations uses chemical fertilizers and herbicides that deplete the soil health and is toxic for humans, water, fish, birds, mammals, insects, and amphibians. Pollution and loss of habitat are the main reason for the 6th mass species extinction currently underway. This year, Ohio, Arkansas, Michigan, and Mississippi, and many other farming states were hit hard by flooding, heavy rain, and other adverse weather events that played a major part in the decline of corn, soybeans, and wheats from being planted. 17.5 million acres were not planted in the U.S. this year. Helping farmers implement organic, regenerative agriculture with diverse crops would sequester more carbon, be more drought resistant, and build healthier soil than conventional agriculture. The Rodale Institute has done studies on the importance of soil health and published a book authored by Kristen Olson from Portland, Oregon, titled The Soil Will Save Us: How Scientists, Farmers, and Foodies Are Healing the Soil to Save the Planet. Agroforestry and permaculture are other positive and healing farming techniques, which includes trees and shrubs throughout crops and pastures to boost both resilience and yields. The Sightline Institute reported on this and mentioned a federal program titled Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, otherwise known as CREP, for conserving environmentally sensitive areas on agricultural land. CREP pays for the cost of planting native trees and shrubs along waterways and pays an annual rent for land that's taken out of production. The Snohomish Conservation District in Washington State came up with an alternative model that allows a working riparian buffer rather than the no-touch buffer that CREP mandates. The intermingling of plant species above ground supports a more diverse microbial world below. This contributes to soil health, nutrient availability, and pollinator abundance. These are tools to make our food production in Lane County more resilient. The other land use issue we need to work on is protecting and restoring our public forests. Our forests in Western Oregon are one of the best forests in the world for the carbon they sequester and store. Dr. Mark Harmon of Oregon State University and Dr. Dominic De La Sala of the GEOS Institute in Ashland, Oregon, are very knowledgeable on this topic. Clear-cut logging and herbicide spraying must stop. Extending rotations for cutting trees to 80 years rather than 40 would be very helpful in sequestering more carbon. Thinning makes sense, especially in crowded and overplanted areas. These are programs to pay private landowners to keep their trees growing for the carbon they sequester. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim New, Stephanie Larson, and Linda Perrine.
Commissioners, my name is Jim New. I live in Commissioner Bozovich's area. Two weeks ago, my wife and I had the opportunity to be guests in a skybox at Eugene Emerald's baseball game. It was the closest I had been to home plate since I played in Little League. Everything was catered by the venue, Pat Kilkenny Park, and all food-associated containers, utensils, and beverage vessels were made of plastic. The plates, the beer cups, the wine glasses, the forks, the knives, spoons, cocktail stir sticks, and the many cases of water bottles were all made of plastic. I was amazed at the amount of plastic being used in the ballpark and was curious if it was the same at the football games, seeing as how I never go to a football game, and all of U of O sports events, and if the 2020-2021 track and field events were going to use plastic as well. So I have asked the U of O Director of Sustainability, who referred me to the U of O Sustainability Committee in the Athletic Department, which has been passing me from one person to another for almost 2 weeks now. Still no answers. Tomorrow morning, the Lane County Board of Commissioners, you, will hear a presentation from Tracktown USA, Travel Lane County, and the U of O Associate Athletic Director regarding the 2020 U.S. Olympic Trials at Hayward Field next June. I do not expect an answer to my question from them, but I am hoping you will have a few questions for them, such as, what is their estimated total carbon footprint of the 9-day event, including air travel? What is their zero waste management plan? Is there a zero waste management plan? Who is directing the zero waste management plan? What sustainable food vending will be in place? Will there be types of plates, cups, utensils, food composting service? Who's running that? U of O handling this or a private vendor? What plan is there to eliminate single-use disposable plastic water bottles, fans, the athletes, etc.? What shuttle services are proposed to and from the airport, other towns? Is it all public transportation or will there be private? What will the public be part of the organizing plan? Will local businesses, local food trucks get priority? What is the backup plan if the cancellation due to poor air quality from a fire? Remember Ashland last 2 summers? No outdoor Shakespeare festivals. Lodging will be insufficient. There's going to be over 30,000 people coming to Eugene. Will there be daily public transportation shuttles to Corvallis, Salem, Portland? I hope you ask questions, get answers to your questions quicker than I am. Thanks.
Thank you. Stephanie Larson, Linda Perrine, and Peter Dragovich.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Larson, and I grew up in Springfield, and I currently live in Eugene, so I claim both cities. I'm here briefly to support the efforts to have a work session on the ballot measure to find money to finance housing for low-income, no-income folks. It's really critical. I watched you this morning on TV, and I appreciated very much the hearing, the comments, and your critique and comments after the people spoke. What you heard this morning was stated far better than I can, the fact that housing is a struggle, how many people are suffering in the streets. All I can really add is that you should be aware that people are dying in the streets. And in terms of short-term interest, winter's coming, and very little effort has been made to deal with the problem that comes up every winter about, well, actually in the fall, about October or November, about what are we going to do, and being unprepared again and again and again. As you all know, the United Way Alice report states that about 40% of the people in this county are living very precariously and are income challenged to meet their rental and housing needs. Since we're talking about funding too, I would like to contrast this with the fact that Oregon has one of the economies in this country that's outperforming the national economy, which is sizzling right now. So we know that a lot of people are doing very well in the state, but that the money tends to be basically concentrated at the top. So that's part of the problem, is finding money. And I know the ballot measure is, actually it's a courageous effort to actually start grappling with how do we get more money to find this, and particularly in light of the current administration in Washington and HUD policies, which are stingy at best. From what was said this morning, I appreciate Commissioner Buck's statement that from the get-go, it's important that rural Lane County be incorporated into the planning of this and have a lot of say about where the money's going to go and be fairly heard and have their needs addressed in an equitable way, which usually doesn't happen in this county. So I think that's a step forward. Thank you. Now, this is sort of off the cuff here, but given the two groups that are here, which are addressing the needs for the public health crisis of addiction and the importance of sustainability and the environmental protection, well, first of all, I have a lot of experience in my history of working on development issues in Latin America. which would have been considered to be third world countries. But I find all that experience actually comes to bear in understanding what's going on in our own country and my own state. One of the problems, I think, on the local level is that we put everything in a box and deal with them in isolation. We deal with the public health crisis here, we deal with the environmental crisis, and then those pesky poor people and the homeless over there, and try to come up with partial solutions to deal with the people in every box. It's time to think out of boxes and be very creative and be very integrative. And I might suggest that where you can find some guidance in this is the United Nations, and particularly the Millennial Development Goals, which link environmental concerns, sustainability, and human needs. And the other thing that happens in this community is that human needs, human services are sort of divorced from development. And that's a false dichotomy, in that human needs, community development should be part of our overall economic development strategy. Although right now, probably the biggest development strategy is what you're going to hear tomorrow morning. It's track meets, the 2020 economic gains, which are supposed to be the economic motor for development in this city. And I might say, in my opinion, at expense of meeting a lot of needs for the low-income people who basically are being told to leave town one form or another. So it's time to think out of the box. There are a lot of people who are really outside of this town and nationally and internationally are already thinking out of the box. So instead of just going to the Association of County Commissioners, I think maybe we need to look to be in solidarity with the rest of the world and find out how maybe they've made more strides in this. And I highly recommend a look at the Millennial Development Goals.
Thank you so much for your public comment.
And a work session, please.
Okay. Linda Perrine, Peter Dragovich, Rebecca Windle.
Good evening. I'm Linda Perrine. Dan Hurley's presentation this afternoon, he mentioned the Carbon Free Challenge, and I'm the project manager for that project, so I thought I'd give you a quick rundown of what that's about. The Carbon Free Challenge project consists of a website that any homeowner can engage with. And my project's chartered with going around and speaking to neighborhood associations in Eugene, NGOs, churches and faith groups, all businesses and all the different groups, and potentially schools this fall as well. And we are working towards getting to targets on this challenge that is a process where the user of the website takes a carbon footprint energy profile test. They answer some basic questions about their home's configuration, and after about a dozen questions, you get spit back at you a carbon footprint for your home. And it's going to be in the scale of 1 to 12 to 15 tons of carbon per person or per household per year. And the website is an effective tool to also feed back at people that the target that we need to all be thinking about is 3 tons. So the average U.S. footprint is 15 approximately tons per person per household. We all need to be getting down to 3 if we're going to remain below the 1.5 degree Celsius IPCC temperature limit. So this website is really well done. I would love the opportunity to present to you, the commissioners and the county staff, a demonstration of what it can do. But currently, we have a goal of 250 households by the end of this year to engage in this site. We're currently at 94. And with a 100-ton reduction in CO2 within the city of Eugene by the end of the year, and we're currently 20% on the way to that, and we've only been doing this for 2 months. So we are sort of prototyping this for the first 6 months in Eugene. We hope to expand it to Springfield and Lane County, and would love an opportunity to show it to you at any time when hopefully we can do it for the whole commission at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Dragovich, Ms. Windle, John Abbey. Welcome.
Yes, good evening. Peter Dragovich, resident of Eugene. Thank you for embarking on a climate action plan, and the good news is there are many success stories from other counties for Lane County to examine as you develop a plan for the county. Multnomah County, for example, is committed 100% to 100% renewable energy. In a short time, they achieved 8% improved efficiency in county buildings, comparing 2018 to 2007 baseline. They decreased water use and diverted 62% of waste, saving $1 million per year in utility expenses. They are ahead of the emissions reduction targets set in their 2015 Climate Action Plan. Washtenaw County, Michigan will achieve net zero emissions for county operations by 2035. Over the past 8 years, they conserved on electricity use by 24% and are using 33% less water, which is a 17% drop in their carbon footprint in 8 years. Santa Clara County, California is committed to achieving 100% carbon neutrality at all county facilities, including getting 100% of its operational electricity from clean renewable sources, eliminating diesel fuel from county operations by 2033, and driving to net zero through plug-in electric vehicles and increasing charging infrastructure. On another front, according to the Oregon Department of Energy's biennial energy report, just released November last year, advancements in renewable energy have substantially driven down costs. The Oregon DOE reports that since 2010, residential solar has reduced in cost by 55%, utility scale solar has reduced 71%, wind power has decreased in cost 75%, and electrical vehicle batteries have plummeted 79%. The DOE report also notes that, quote, marine energy is an emerging renewable resource. Today, there's a wave energy farm project underway near Newport that would supply the electricity needs of 40,000 residents, harnessing the motion of the ocean. There's a green job technological revolution underway, both on the supply side and the demand side of the equation. Climate disruption from fossil fuel burning is an issue that we've known about for a long time, and action is needed now. In 1959, Edward Teller, a leading physicist of his day, told top oil business executives at a forum sponsored by the American Petroleum Institute, quote, carbon dioxide has a strange property. It transmits visible light, but it absorbs the infrared radiation which is emitted from the Earth. Its presence in the atmosphere causes a greenhouse effect. He predicted that the temperature will rise and, quote, there is a possibility that the ice caps will start melting and the level of the oceans will begin to rise, end quote. And then in 1982, after spending millions on research, Exxon scientists, in a document that was given wide circulation to Exxon management, concluded that heading off global warming would, quote, require major reductions in fossil fuel combustion. There are some potentially catastrophic events that must be considered, end quote. Delay, it warned, was dangerous. Quote, once the effects are measurable, they may not be reversible, end quote. Thank
you so much for your public comment.
That was known in 1982. It's past time for meaningful action.
Thank you. Okay, so Rebecca Wendell and John Aubie, Deb McGee, Patty Hine. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Wendell. I live just outside of Monroe, and I work in Eugene. I grew up on a small family dairy farm. I went to Oregon State University, where I got a degree in forestry management, and luckily enough, the program is top-notch, where we get lectures from researchers that are top in their field. I've worked from the BLM, the Forest Service, and I now work in the private industry. And I do work from running planting crews to laying out harvest units to doing land use work. And really, I think in Oregon we have some of the best natural resource policies to where I think we do some of the best forestry work in the world. We really are at a wood basket here, and I know everyone who I've worked with is really proud of the work that they do. And I'm also part of Oregon Women in Timber, where their main goal is to educate the public about forestry. And I think my personal belief is most conflicts are derived from misinformation and miscommunication. And I would invite the commissioners to think of rural families who are dependent on the timber industry when making decisions. And I know boots on the ground in forestry are always more than happy to explain and educate on what they do for a living. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. John Abbey, Deb McGee, Betty Hine.
Hello, and thank you for taking this time. My name is John Abbey. I've been in staying in several districts over the past few months, so I could end up voting for or not any of you in the next election.
Not me. I'm not running.
All right, fair enough.
Against him anyway.
As with most people who have grown up in this growth-addicted and apparently inequality-addicted society, I have definitely suffered from addictive patterns. And so I can only echo what the group Oregon Recovery, thank you, sorry, are saying here. Mental health is an immense issue. I think we can all be grateful that the feds and the state have come around to equal footing on financing in some ways, but obviously there's still work left to be done. Locally, we have a lot to be proud of, publicly and privately, even with the problems in sheer quantity of funding. You know, there's Cahoots and Mind Freedom International and other groups privately. Peer support at the state level receiving financial support, that's a big deal. We can build on that. But there's a lot more that can be done. I'm proud to have found out just today that Willamette Food and Farm Coalition helps finance the food stamp matching program recently, and that Trillium has done so in the past. So related to the Trillium support, I don't remember the name of it, but the similar organization as CCO or whatever it is down in some of the southern Oregon counties recently chose not food, but housing as a healthcare issue. So they're trying to figure out, how do we provide the health care we need to provide? One of their big issues is we send people home, and there's no home for them to go to. They can't follow through properly and so on. So that, support by those organizations is something, we can all be led by. So having come around to housing, I'm here largely the first reason I came here was to support the affordable housing. Now, the specific proposal on the table for $50 million for truly affordable housing, I understand people have concerns about drawing it from property taxes. That's fine. I think that's secondary. We can have that conversation. But $50 million is really still less than the least we can do and what's needed to address the situation on the large scale, just as the 75 bed proposal for downtown Eugene or somewhere in Eugene is also, nowhere near enough, but at least it's something. So in closing, I want to echo what's been said about the connections between climate, environmental issues and all these things, and health. It's all closely related. So think about that during the Climate Action Plan. If you have a chance, check out the Natural Step online, the 4 system conditions for sustainability, especially the fact that they had to add that 4th one, societal equity, to the point where it works. And finally, I hope everybody will step up a month from now for the week-long action of climate strikes to keep drawing attention to all of these interrelated issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb McGee, Patty Hine, and Michael Griffin.
Good evening. My name's Deb McGee. I'm in Heather Buck's district, and I organize with 350 Eugene. I want to share a rhyme and time with you tonight. I want to share something I learned the other day. It really freaked me out, kind of blew my mind away. Here, scientists say if ocean wasn't absorbing the heat it does today, we'd be 95 degrees hotter. OMG, what more can I say? The laws of physics, non-negotiable. Want to dispute reality, hold another study, go ahead, spend all that money. But the planet's heating up, and our behavior is the cause. The only thing that's going to save us is tough, tough, tough laws. It really sucks. It's on our watch. Won't help to wish it different. Kids everywhere know it. We've blown it. What to do? Here's the hint. We need serious action and bold leaders to show the way. If you're not a climate champion, become one today. We know we got some heavy stuff. We know we've got a deal. Racism, immigration, Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, homeless kids, where's their next meal? What overshadows all, what makes it all much worse? The climate catastrophe. a health and safety curse. We didn't mean to break it, but now we know we did. Actions we take today determine life for every kid. The ocean is dying, the insects are too. Pollinating our food, what are we going to do? Question asked by Jane Goodall, how is it possibly possible? So clever, so strong, so able to roam, this human creature made a system that destroys our only home. I think the answer is clear to see. It's my one-liner, no-brainer, can't say it much finer. Avarice and greed, profits over people in need, humans' love of shiny technology. Truth is, like all animals, on nature's health, ours depends. We can do too little too late and try to make amends. Will that be how the story of our species ends? Our children are rising up, telling us we blew it. No more pretending we know our consumption screwed it. We have to end the greenhouse gas pollution. Everyone is part of the problem or part of the solution. Where do you stand? Please support and attend the Global Climate Strike, September 20th through September 27th. Answer the call of Greta Thunberg and all of our intrepid youth. Adults, get out in the streets, act freaked out, declare a climate emergency. We have to rebel against extinction. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Patty Hine, welcome, followed by Michael Griffin and Ron Wallace. Welcome, Patty Hine.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Patty Hine, and I live in Commissioner Buck's district. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight in all these evening public sessions. Really appreciate it. With the Lane County Action Planning begun officially, we'll soon have a greenhouse gas inventory, which is the perfect place to start. And you can depend on 350 Eugene and your partners in the community to be all in creating a climate action plan that actually reduces emissions. We're very hopeful with Mr. Hurley and his dedicated staff over at the Public Works Department. He knows, and they all know, as you do, we're getting a late start. So I'm here to urge you to have big and open minds. If there ever was a time for it, this is it. Please ensure your climate planners have all the tools and resources that we can muster for this job. They're going to need it. Thank you for making climate action planning a priority. I'm just wanting to mark that the consequences of climate change are becoming more clear every day. You may be aware of the new powerful wave of a climate movement that has been swelling up over the last few years with youth. Young people on Fridays have been walking out every week, every month now for 2 years. It's a coalition of young people. Fridays for Future, they're called. Extinction Rebellion Youth, Future Coalition, and the Sunrise Movement. They're here in our community. They're following the lead of Greta and have been going on strike, and we're going to answer their call to join them this September on the 20th through the 27th. Because as a global society, we are really at a crossroads. We have a decision to make individually and collectively. Are we going to take the easy way out, kick the can down the road, make excuses, look for others to blame, step back instead of lean into the bold solutions that are already out there and available? Or are they just too politically difficult? We're talking about significantly changing the way we do everything. Whether it feels like it to us right here, right now, globally we are in a climate emergency. You talked about climate refugees this morning. We have to rethink our energy system. We have to electrify everything. We have to rethink forestry, using trees to stabilize the amount of atmospheric carbon, which means stop cutting down the old and big ones. We have to relocalize our economy and provide massive opportunities for working families, and much more. So thank you for finally getting the ball rolling. Let's make this year a big year for climate action. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Michael Griffin, welcome, followed by Ron Wallace and R.S. Self.
Hi, I'm Michael Griffin and I live in Bonita. I'd like to begin by saying thank you for having these meetings when average working citizen can attend. If it weren't for this time, I wouldn't be here. I've been attending these meetings for the past couple of months, and I would like to thank those of you in the audience who have been respectful and courteous to those who have come up here to speak to the commissioners. My entire family has been a part of the logging industry for 3 generations. In my family, there are those who drive truck, build roads, work in the mills, etc. We're all supported by the timber industry in one way or another. Myself, I have a forest engineering degree, and I have been working for a little over a year in my career. But my time in the woods precedes college. I grew up building roads for the company my father works for, and it has fueled my passion for being outside in the woods. Today, I spend nearly every day in the woods. I am passionate about my work and the things I do to protect the lands and wildlife I work and recreate in. At work, I protect water and streams. When laying out harvest units, I flag in buffers around streams and wetlands. Streams of different classes and sizes get their respective buffers as required by Oregon law. These laws are dynamic and they have been improved over the years to reflect scientific studies. In fact, the best drinking water found in the state comes from forested lands with managed timber, according to the DEQ. I do this work every day to protect fish and other aquatic species. These buffers are visible from after our harvest, and they are essential to the preservation of wildlife habitat. They keep the water in the stream shaded, preventing the water from becoming too warm for fish. This is one of the many things I do at work every day to ensure that there is a sustainable forest for many generations to come, so that my children and grandchildren can enjoy the woods the same that I do. It is not just my job, it is my lifestyle. What I would like everybody here to remember is that the forest industry is full of real people with real jobs, with real families, and real responsibilities. We contribute to society and Oregon in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ron Wallace, followed by R.S. Self, followed by Bernice.
Hello, I'm Ron Wallace. I live near Alvador. I'm a member of the NAACP Environmental Justice Committee and also a member of the Executive Committee of the Many Rivers Group of the Sierra Club. At the Sierra Club, we have nearly 6,000 members in Lane, Douglas, and Coos counties. We are science-based advocates for many environmental issues, and the climate has risen to the top of our priorities. The science, from sources such as the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate and the National Academy of Sciences, tells us that we have a narrow window, perhaps less than 15 years, to act to completely eliminate additional greenhouse gases on this planet. With no action from our federal government and setbacks on the state level, we believe that climate action must be best done on the local and county level. So we're hoping you will keep implementing that agenda. It must be done soon, now. Please do everything you can to keep the climate action plan on target. Future generations are depending on us to keep this planet viable. Thank you.
Thank you. So R.S. Self, followed by Bernice, followed by Robin Bloomgarden. I have 2 more people on this sheet. Are there more sheets? Yep. Okay. So welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for staying late and listening to our comments this evening. I appreciate all you're doing. I'm here to support the intent of the $50 million bond measure. However, when the TAC report was presented and it was said that we would find the money, I had a sinking feeling we would come to this. If you do a tax, and the intent, the affordable housing is needed. Believe me, it is so needed for the reasons that others have given, and this morning there is more than enough reasoning for the affordable housing. However, you do a tax, and you tax the people that don't want to pay the tax, and you force it down them, then they will shuffle it off onto the poor, and the poor will be the next victims, and then you'll have a whole bunch more people who are unhoused on the streets. You'll defeat the purpose of this. I think the tax, if you do it the way you're saying, then you're going to defeat the purpose. If you tax the right people, and think outside of the box and add preventative funding as part of this $50 million. There are people out there that are renters that are housed that could become unhoused any moment because they make just a little bit too much to receive any type of subsidy or food stamps or anything else. So, and they could be out. With the housing laws that were just enacted, you still have that 12 months of no-cause evictions that could happen and all of this other. There's no preventative measures to help anybody, especially that's not receiving any subsidy whatsoever, from being laid a victim of what your intent here is to house people. But you know as well as I do, you give a tax to somebody that has, they don't want to pay it, so they will shuffle it off to the consumer through products, services, rent, or what have you. I'm just saying, think about it. You could be taxing property management companies for every time they deny somebody an application. How about that? How about taxing the space invaders like Sinclair Media or these other people that come to our town and have no stake in our locality? How about the Japanese conglomerate eyesore I look at that's called student housing that's over there on 13th and Olive? Do they get to pitch in on this? I'm just saying, yeah, there's almost the red light. Okay, well, I'm just saying the intent is needed. But if you force people to pay a tax that they won't like, then they will shuffle it on to other people, and then you'll defeat the whole purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the man behind the tree. So your name is?
Bernice.
Okay, welcome Bernice, and I'll start the timer soon, but we want to make sure Robin Bloomgarden and David Tevet know that they're on deck, so welcome Bernice.
Hi, thank you. I have 2 children that go to school in Springfield, and I also sit on the Community Housing Development Board, or Advisory Board for Springfield. Notice I didn't say I live in Springfield. I don't have a place to live. And so, of course, I'm here about the housing bond. Please, please, we got to do something. Nobody else has any ideas. And it's getting hard. It's really hard. My kids are getting ready to start school again. And it's so hard when you don't really know where you're going to be when they get out of school and to do all that. I'm so tired, and I'm starting to lose hope. And I know a lot of other people are too. So please, I mean, there's not any better ideas, but we've got to do something.
Thank you so much for taking the time and being here this evening. Robin Bloomgarden, David Tevet, and Edith Roberts. Welcome, Robin Bloomgarden.
Hi, I'm Robin Bloomgarden, and I'm in Jay's district. I'm glad to hear you guys are working on a new plan for collecting plastics, number 2, 4, and 5. It sounds like all the onus is on citizens to volunteer to collect stuff, deliver stuff, and make sure plastics are prepared properly. I don't get that. But anyway, there is always a lot of talk during campaigns about jobs, making jobs for people. Why not put some people to work in jobs to sort and clean plastics? And what about metal can and bottle lids as well? I mean, that all is just going in the garbage these days. So how about making some jobs so that it can be picked up on the street and delivered to this recycling place, and there's jobs for people to deal with it like we used to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, David Tevet, Edith Roberts, and we're on to the next sheet. Steve Deere.
Hi, my name is David Tevet, and I'm in Commissioner Farr's district. And I want to encourage you to support the work session we've talked about earlier for our two initiatives, putting them out as ballot measures, not as charter amendments. I'd appreciate you really helping move that forward. It's really important to a lot of us at all over Lane County. And those two initiatives, of course, are aerial herbicide spray ban and right to local self-government. So thank you for progressing on that. Hopefully that can be soon. And the other thing I want to comment on, I want to express some appreciation to Commissioner Sorensen for bringing up during the Climate Action Plan session this afternoon about actually looking bigger and that our forests and our landscapes in Lane County can serve as a large carbon sink. It is, I think, a big source of help in dealing with our contributions to carbon emissions. A study out of Oregon State University and then from a nonprofit both indicate that logging in Oregon is the biggest single contributor to carbon emissions, and a little over 30%, and it's larger than any other source. And in Lane County and Douglas County, the two biggest timber counties in the whole United States, it easily could be over 50%. So it's a really important place to look. And I think it's really important we envision looking at Lane County forests and agricultural land in a new way that helps support carbon sequestration and creates jobs. We can re-envision forest jobs that don't include the huge amount of forest liquidation that industrial forestry is doing in Lane County. Thank you.
Okay. Edith Roberts, followed by Steve Deere, followed by Todd Boyle.
I'm Edith Roberts. I live in Eugene in Commissioner Sorensen's district.
Feel free to pull down that.
Sorry. I'm going to speak about the Climate Action Plan, but first I want to mention briefly something about the ordinances submitted by, the petitions submitted by the community rights group in the area in Lane County. Although it may currently be true that the citizens of Lane County have no control over the harmful use of pesticides in Lane County to control weed growth in agriculture and forestry, many would argue it is time to take back control of our lands and the health of our communities. Community Rights of Lane County urges you to schedule a joint work session concerning the referral of both the aerial spray ban and the right of local community self-government ordinances to the 2020 ballot. Over 15,000 signatures were collected for the petitions for these ordinances, meeting the signature requirements for having these ordinances put on the ballot. The only way to reestablish local control over the health of our citizens and our land is through the court system. Let us begin that process to bring to everyone's attention the importance of these issues. Regarding the adoption of a climate action plan, there are many reasons to adopt a Lane County climate action plans. Many of the issues involved in responding to climate change can be better managed on a regional level, whether through better land management, increasing greater resilience through increased local food production, or managing social economic policies to foster greater use of renewables and reusables and reduction of waste in a way that fosters equity and recognizes more just environmental policies. In the book Drawdown, edited by Paul Hawken, a strong argument is made for shifting mostly to plant-rich diets, listed as the fourth most important solution for combating climate change. Their research estimates that if 50% of the world's population restricted their diet to 2,500 calories a day and reduced meat consumption overall, at least 26.7 gigatons of emissions could be avoided. A significant part of the solution to climate change relates to land management and food production, 23rd on the list of adaptive strategies described in the book Drawdown. 23rd on the list of adaptive strategies described in the book Drawdown is farmland restoration. Number 3 is reduced food waste. Number 28 is multistrata agroforestry. Who are our resources for creating a plan to increase the health of our forests while producing more food regionally? 9th on the list is silvopasture. the integration of trees and pasture into a single system for raising cattle, sheep, deer, or ducks. Number 11 on the list of practices that could restore carbon and reduce emissions is regenerative agriculture, which can be used to restore degraded land and regenerate the health of soil by restoring its carbon content and improving plant health, nutrition, and productivity. These practices include, in part, no tillage, diverse cover crops, in-farm fertility, no pesticides or synthetic fertilizers, and multiple crop rotations which can be augmented with managed grazing. With the adoption of a climate action plan, the county would be in a position to assemble a commission of experts on land use, food systems, restorative justice, innovative communication platforms, and legal mechanisms, making use of ideas like land trusts, rural organizing groups, cooperative farming, and collaborative enterprise techniques, as well as increasing the use of renewable energy and waste reduction in rural areas and on farms.
Thank you for your public comment. Welcome. Okay, Steve Deere, followed by Todd Boyle.
Good evening. My name is Steve Deere. I live in Elmira. This is the most forgettable, trivial, and least important thing said into this microphone in a long time, and I'm sorry for that. I say it with affinity and respect. I'm no wordsmith, but I'm here to remonstrate about the use of the word remonstrate and remonstration, which I've heard 3 commissioners use today to refer to your words following public comments. And Google, if you look up the word, it just comes up with, to make a forcefully reproachful protest. That's our job. Merriam-Webster says it is to present and urge reasons in opposition. And Cambridge English Dictionary says it's to complain to someone or about something, which you may well do when you go home about what you've heard. So may I suggest that you reply or offer reflections. But in any case, please don't forget to do whatever 350 Eugene and Community Rights Lane County ask you to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your remonstrance. Some of us will remonstrance further. Okay, Mr. Boyle, you are the last person that signed up, but wait a minute, I have one more person signed up after you, so welcome, Mr. Boyle.
Well, I was going to ask for all the rest of the time, but I guess But anyway, Todd Boyle, I live in the Amazon neighborhood here in Eugene. I'm a retired CPA, and I worked for Ernst & Young, Pricewaterhouse, Alexander as a typical career. I graduated from the university in '78, and now look at me. So anyway, I'm speaking to the housing emergency for the bottom 20% of income, where I think that's really the worst part of the emergency. And the project underway for a $50 million housing bond. So in principle, of course, everybody, not everybody, I strongly support the taxing of homeowners, including myself, to actually what we're actually doing is we are causing an externality upon all the landless people, which is more than half of the people in the city and county, I believe, by the fact that we own land. Land is a zero-sum game, and it's an arithmetic externality that if we own all the land, then the people who don't have land are the victims of our holding of land. And so, and this goes way back to the 1800s, the Georgist, philosophy. So anyway. Respect to the many voices this morning on the public comments, and especially Commissioner Sorensen and Bernie, I really resonated on your comments. And I urge everybody to listen to those, especially Commissioner Sorensen mentioned that the housing bond has to be acceptable to the majority of the taxpayers. So anyway, any housing bond, in my opinion, has to achieve numbers of permanent housing, and that should be the benchmark that we're going to try to achieve. Recent project, Homes for Good, and the St. Vincent de Paul have achieved a unit cost of $250,000 per unit. That's a sum that most Eugenians have never had in their entire life. And then you're asking them to pay taxes and then these also require ongoing subsidies. So that's not going to work. In the long run, it's not sustainable. So what I'm thinking is, $1 million gets you 4 units. So a $50 million housing bond, what would that be? 200 units, if it all went to housing, which it wouldn't. Some would go to overhead. So I'll support the bond if it comes in at $100,000 per unit for the entire bond, if it gives me 500 units. That means $400,000 fourplexes under the COTEC bill. We're going to just put fourplex, 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 and any crew that can't build a fourplex for $400,000, they need to go into a different line of work. Okay. Also, any housing bond has to be explicitly targeted to the first and second deciles of income. and that is the 30% of the area median income. And I will fight against measures that are going to the 40 and 60 and 80% of AMI, which includes the LIHTC federal program and the HUD projects and MUPTI and so forth. These are going to people who are making 35, 40,000 because they can afford to pay, you see. And so their ability to pay some of the rent helps to fund the project, which is coming in at $250,000 per unit. And that's not sustainable because we know who's getting all these salaries. And the houses, the apartments are small. They're 300 square feet, you know. So we need more units for the money. That's my final comment. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, Peggy Thomas, welcome. Ms. Thomas. You can use that microphone if it's easier.
Sure. You probably hear me anyway. I'm loud. I know a few of you up there. I've lived in the community for a lot of years. In Eugene, I came here in '91, and I've been living at where I've lived, you know, where I'm living now for almost 20 years. And the other day on the telephone, my landlord told me that they would be fine if I moved because then they could update the unit and charge more rent. But there's nowhere that I can afford to rent. I'm on disability and Social Security. There's no place in Eugene that would rent to me now. I can't afford it. And I'm not the only one in this position. There's a lot of seniors and disabled people that are in the same boat. And I know people, as they get older, they can't afford the rents or the property taxes, and they end up buying motor homes and mobile homes, and they're putting their motor homes in little KOA campgrounds and stuff on the outskirts of the, like, Cottage Grove and Junction City and places like that. They can't afford to live in Eugene anymore. And they're also moving into mobile homes. They're buying mobile homes and moving into parks on the outer cities. So all of the housing that was available to people in those income brackets has just disappeared because there's a housing shortage. There's a complete and total housing shortage. People, landlords, since the new law has been great because they stop you from getting evicted. If you know, for no cause, if you've lived there over a year and they stop them from raising the rents, just, you know, I mean, we had our landlord in where I'm living, they raised rent 4 times in a year, which is over $200. And you know, it was just crazy. So people can't feed their kids now. I mean, it's bad. And there's nowhere to go. You can't move. And then the new law is great, but landlords are still taking advantage of people's ignorance and fear to kind of bully them into doing things that they shouldn't have to do or that they don't know that they don't have to do. And it's pretty scary. And they're making ridiculous demands. They're coming down on people over little things that they used to not pay attention to before. And telling, you know, basically they want people to leave so that they can rent out to higher paying people and thinking that they can get it. And so they're kind of making up excuses over little stuff. And so people are getting pushed out. And the people who can't afford it are the ones that are going to end up in the streets. And thinking, and I don't know what you guys can do about this, but I know tenants need more protections. And I think that there needs to be a lot more advocacy for tenants going on, because it's absolutely terrifying for people that, that have any kind of a background that makes you unacceptable to a landlord. It's absolutely terrifying because you're going to end up in the street and you're going to stay there. And that's basically what it means. Or you won't be able to live in Eugene. You have to go somewhere else because it's just not affordable here.
Thank you for your public comment. Hey, well, we set up some time for a further commissioner response to public comments and or other issues, and in the event of a remonstrance, also that too. So who wants to go first, commissioners?
I always get to go first. This is great. There are actually quite a few subjects tonight, and in previous evening meetings, we've been dominated by usually one big subject. So I might bounce around here because there's a lot of good conversation going this evening. I want to first address Oregon Recovers. You have been so patient since you first spoke here as a group, and I'm so sorry that not everybody could stay to hear our responses, but you have a supporter in me, and for those that came and had to leave, and also for all of you that are able to stay, and those that are in recovery, and those that are already in the program and graduated, your stories are very inspirational, not only to me, but all the people that are in the place where you were. It has got to be just deeply difficult, and I can only empathize because I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. But I recognize what you've been doing and all the hard work that it takes to get through recovery, and I want to be there to support you as much as possible. I haven't had a chance to read the resolution that you presented, but I look forward to reading it and seeing how we as a county can be helpful. When we do resolutions, my request generally has been, we've had discussions on the board not to just do resolutions to do resolutions. Like we want to have, if we believe in a resolution, I feel as a body, we want to be able to have steps that follow that to show our commitment. And what that would be in your situation, I'm not necessarily clear with yet, other than, of course, we want to support people in treatment programs. But I would like to know from you, what can we do if we were to be able to do more, and in what form? So I wanted to at least address that first, and maybe you can share that with some of the folks that had to leave. But thank you for coming. It's very admirable. I wanted to jump down to Mr. Griffin. Your statement was really concise, and I grew up in Veneta, so we've been talking about Veneta a lot today. I have a real soft spot for that place, and know the environment that you described. It was similar when I was younger and I lived there. And I appreciated how you presented your point of view, and I like that about having this public evening comment period, because we get to have different folks come in the evening that couldn't be there during the day and give us your thoughts. And I really appreciated everything that you had to say. And I want to jump to the housing bond, because that was another big subject we've been talking about today. I just want to be clear that we actually haven't had a discussion about a housing bond here at the board yet. There isn't necessarily one currently being presented to the public. What we're hearing is feedback from the certain community members that are interested in one. And, but we haven't necessarily formulated a specific idea or even had a discussion on what we would pursue. So I just don't want that, that misconception that it's already been presented and here it is and it's going to be on the ballot next year. That hasn't even occurred on the board. And there's going to be a lot of process and a lot of discussion from what I see going forward if one was pursued. Housing is expensive. And I think Mr. Boyle talked about this wherever he may have gone. There you are. It's extremely expensive to put together affordable housing packages. This is what I've done in my previous political career, but professional career. And it's so expensive mainly because you're patchworking different sources of money together. And each one has an administrative overcost and audit when you're patchworking 3 to 10 different financial pieces together, the administrative diligence you have to do takes time and energy and staff and finances. And I could go on and on about how there's better ways to do this, but that is the system we have now. And everyone is trying to match and contribute to a cause because no one entity wants to pay for the whole thing by themselves. And that's where it kind of gets complicated when you want, if there's a pursuit of a housing bond, how to structure that. So using the money in the most efficient way. But then again, you know, money's finite. And there's only going to be so much that people are willing to be generous towards this particular subject. And I would also argue that there are folks that are between the 30% and the 80% AMI, average medium income, that are also on the street and can't find housing, even though you calculate how much they're making and do the math. After all their housing expenses, there is zero left for rent. And those people should not be left out of a conversation regarding housing. It may be a different method in which we might be able to help them. You never really, you have to look at what's available at the time, what grants are available, what state money, and what partnerships are. It's always been a patchwork of what's available at any given point in time to find the right amount of project money and make that development happen. That's a long-winded version of saying a housing bond needs some diligent effort and coordination and discussion before anything's formulated and presented to the public. And I'm, of course, open to discussion about anything relating to increasing our housing in the city and around the county. And as I mentioned, and Commissioner Sorensen mentioned, it has to be equitable throughout the entire county, especially for those that are not in the urban areas who fundamentally have different housing needs than us in the Metro Center, or in me, where I'm kind of in between those areas. So I just wanted to share my thoughts regarding the housing issue. I have a lot more thoughts, but I won't bore you all. Thank you all for coming.
Okay, do any other commissioners want to make any remarks?
Sure. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Joe, for deferring. You know, I'm going to talk first to the folks over on the left from Oregon Recovers. Bonnie, you're still here. Bonnie, you said that you were put on the list 6 weeks waiting for a bed. Your friend was, excuse me. And then Terry, are you still here? Terry Morgan? Terry's not, but Terry said something very poignant, and this really cuts to the core of it for me. Terry said that nobody asked me if I wanted to change. Nobody asked me if I wanted to get clean. And that really is puts a thumb on the issue. We don't believe that people who are suffering from addictions have a medical emergency. And if you look at medical providers, and you look at the plans that we have, the insurance plans that we have, they don't believe that people with the critical medical emergencies that exist among people with addictions. When we're talking about housing, for instance, people who are suffering from behavioral health issues, to include addictions, are the people who are most easily thrown out on the street and end up staying on the street because they cannot find the means to support themselves to get back into housing. Now, a direction that we're going with that is housing first, and we have a strong commitment to providing housing first. We're going to be breaking ground on a facility next month, which will provide 50 beds for people with addictions, people with behavioral health issues, with active addictions. And it was, I believe, Kimberlyn, maybe you said that they required you be clean and sober for 30 days before you get a bed. Isn't that ridiculous? How are you going to get clean and sober for 30 days before you get a bed? And you said, if I could get clean and sober by myself, I wouldn't need a bed. Well, that's the circle of lack of care that we have in not just in our community, but across the nation. And as we provide more and more supportive housing that provides places for people to live safely, people to access services without saying you have to be dry to be here, to come in here, that's when we'll start to begin to crack the issue. And you know, we have a goal currently of 600 Housing First units before 2021. It's an aggressive goal. The 50 beds that we're starting next month will combine with some of the others, but it will begin to address the issue. But until we can understand that people with addictions need medical treatment, that they need first-rate medical treatment without having to take care of themselves first, then we'll continue in this cycle. I want to thank you guys all for being here. And on September 14th is on my calendar. September 14th, I'll be walking with you. It's going to be a good opportunity to make a statement and let people know that we can make a difference. And in fact, if we address the issues surrounding people with addictions, with active addictions, if we can place people in houses where they can access services, then we're going to begin to not only address your issues, we're going to address a lot of the housing issues that exist in the community. I can talk all night about the housing issues and providing affordable housing, providing my goal is for income-based housing, where people pay what they can afford to pay in a sustained fashion. And until we can do that, then we're going to be spinning our wheels. There's a lot of work ahead of us. When we begin to look at the bond in the next couple of months, we'll begin to talk seriously about what does a bond look like and how will we address with the tiny amount of $50 million, the great housing crisis that we have. Then we'll begin to move forward on that. There are a lot of things happening right now regarding housing, and Richard, you've been at the Housing Policy Board. I've seen you there, and I'm not sure if I've seen you at the Poverty and Homelessness Board, but you've been very active, and you've been providing proactive suggestions that people have been listening to. So I want to encourage you to continue doing that. And the last person that I wanted to address was Rebecca. Wendell, you still here, Rebecca? She had to leave. It takes a great deal of courage to stand in front of an audience and say the things that Rebecca had to say. You know, it's sometimes when you're not the popular person in the room with the things that you deeply believe in, it's easy to get waved down. And it's easy to, like a group of people may have done tonight, just walk out of the room because they didn't feel that they were going to be heard. But thank you for staying in there. Thank you for hanging in with the fortitude that you did. Let's see, the last gentleman who spoke, your name, I'm sorry, I don't have it written down. Yeah, thanks. You live in Elmira, you said, right? Benita. But thank you once again for stepping in front of an audience and very boldly saying things that are very factual, very truthful statements, and not allowing people to wave you down. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Burney.
I wish I had something wise to say. I have nothing wise to say. And I get to say it sitting about half a level above, which I also don't particularly like. Steve Deere, you still here? Oh, I was just going to tell him I agreed with him. What he said was the least important item that we discussed tonight, and yet I don't like that word remonstrance either, and I just learned what it was. And I never heard of it before I became a commissioner. I'd like to, just a few things if I might. One, Oregon Recovers. My eyes are so bad, my writing is so bad, I wrote down revolution, not resolution. I did read the resolution. I had the opportunity to visit, and my understanding is it's simply supporting you as you're trying to go to the state and feds to receive resources to provide, I mean, I know I'm misstating, but to provide more resources and access to addicts for treatment is my understanding. And I agree with Commissioner Buckham there. I agree. I think within the revolution, within the resolution, you also state the dire situation of Oregon as a state in terms of number of addicts compared to other states, and the dire situation of Oregon in terms of access to service and treatment by addicts. So we will move on that. I just, I can't say everything. Bernice, I don't know if you noticed, but I couldn't even keep my composure when you were talking, and it's so nice to see you. And I can't tell you not to give up hope, but I'm trying not to. My heart is with you, you know that. For those of you that don't know, we have scheduled a joint working session as it relates to the two initiatives, and that joint working session, I believe, is scheduled for October 13th. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
I think it's
Or
16.
great,
I think it's
October 16th. Thank you. That occurred this morning.
9 a.m. in this room.
Yeah, October 16th, 9 a.m., couple hours in this room. In terms of those of you that spoke regarding Climate Action Plan, I'm delighted to be part of the group of commissioners that have introduced that. At the time, some of our previous commissioners were wanting to argue about whether climate change was a thing or not. And I had the opportunity to say that I didn't want to debate climate change or whether the earth was flat or round. I would like to look at how we can mitigate carbon, what our greenhouse gas emissions are. And I would like you to know that our Director of Public Works received the go-ahead this morning, and he's moving forward on all the areas that you talked about from the United Nations guidelines that are going to structure the Lane County approach to prioritizing and hiring someone so that this begins soon and moving forward. So I expect all of you that talk to get in there and not just talk, but work and help out. As it relates to, and this isn't everything, but I just want to share real quickly that it's in 7.5 months as a commissioner. I mean, how many times have I said I can't speak for Commissioner Buck, but for myself, it's so clear what we already knew. One is that everything is connected to everything. Housing, poverty, environment, impacts of climate change on the most vulnerable, and just everything is related to everything. But everything is also related to business opportunities and economic opportunities and how we ease transitions if we have to move from one area to another. And yet the irony is, and forgive me for saying this, but I was weaned in the Christian church, and I remember as a child just really you know, do you worship God or do you worship money? Do you worship, right? Do you worship spirit or do you worship man? And I think we're all witnessing a transition. I think we're all seeing the things just aren't working anymore. And I think we're seeing transitions, and I think what we need to remember as we're seeing those transitions is that no matter what side of the fence or an issue, we're all neighbors. We all live in the same place. We all breathe the same air. We all want our children to live a better life than we lived. We all want our grandchildren to enjoy the rich legacy that is ours, that we have gotten to enjoy. We have more that binds us together than that separates us, but we live in an environment where people are angry and separation is being imposed by many, including, I believe, politicians. And so I'm delighted that all sides of all issues can come here and that we can embrace one another's differences and plow forward. And I can tell you that my experience, and by the way, when I met with the Springfield Treatment Center Director, Terry, she looked at me and she said, full disclosure, I need to tell you I've never talked to an elected official before. And I looked at her, I said, well, full disclosure, I've never been an elected official before. I think there's a lot of hope here. I appreciate everybody being here. I appreciate you articulating your views. I appreciate being able to disagree without being disagreeable and to realize we all have more in common. And on this housing thing, I want to echo what Commissioner Buck said. It's not a thing yet. There is no there yet. But what there has been a call from the community that's forced this board to begin processing and looking at how we can't equitably develop more housing options. And this morning I said, and I'll say it again, the biggest obstacles are not here. The biggest obstacle to housing, take a look at our defense budget. Take a look at the tax structure. Take a look at why people are now no longer incented to give as much money to nonprofits that are trying to get in there and glue the cracks that are occurring and fissures in our society. So we're all at the same place, which is how do we reorganize the crumbs to serve best those in most need. It's not a great place to be, but it's where we are and where I think solutions will occur. And as those solutions occur, I think they will go viral because people in all communities are in the same position. And our choice is either we get angry at each other or we work together. And I'm going to choose to work together. And I thank you all for being here so much.
Hey, thank you, because that gives me a chance to finish up by saying I agree. But no, there's more. You know, we have a coal lobbyist running the EPA. We have a big pharma executive running Health and Human Services at the national level. We have an oil lobbyist that's running the Department of the Interior. We have a Raytheon lobbyist who's running the DOD. And we have a Verizon lawyer who is now running the FCC. So when we hear up here commissioners saying, wow, we are having an amazing moment in American history where literally the Congress has stripped the funding of the federal government while at the same time increasing a overly bloated military budget at the same time. What has it done? It's forced up borrowing at the federal level. So now they can say, oh, local communities, that you have a problem with your addiction? You have a problem with your housing? Sorry, we can't help you. Okay? It's just what was predicted. And I believe the statement was, what we're going to do is we're going to take the baby into the bathtub and drown it. That was the statement, to devise this strategy. That's what we're living with. But be that as it may, we do have these problems. They are in our community, and unlike other local governments or unlike other governments, we're right here. We are listening to you. We are trying to deal with these problems. I'll take a couple in order. I really appreciate all the hard work you guys put into designing your nice shirts, coming here, staying within your 3 minutes, and most importantly, your advocacy for the resolution. If there's one thing our legislative committee can do and that our lobbying effort in Salem can do and our Board of Commissioners in approving a legislative program, it is to ask the legislature for additional funds for addiction treatment in our community. And as Commissioner Burney said, there's a lot of support on this board for that. And I've been on the board longer than him, so I won't say we can definitely do it because I know something will come up that I'm not currently aware of, but we certainly will do everything we can to put that advocacy in place. We know from all of our hundreds of hours of discussions of addiction and mental health and parole and probation and our jail and our sheriff's office that addiction is one of the most serious problems facing the community. So thank you for your vigilance in keeping this message coming. In terms of our climate action plan, today was a historic day. It really turned a corner in terms of this board's reaction to the climate challenge crisis that the world's facing. For those of you who know, I look at the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration's Mauna Kea report every day. And today it was 410.28 parts per million that's way above what it's been. And for those of you that may want, well, why do we care whether the air is clean above the Mauna Kea volcano or not? About 2,000 miles southwest of Mauna Kea is the cleanest cleanest air in the world. It's south of where the air passes over the Chinese and Japanese and Korean pollution, and it's far enough away from Australia and New Zealand that prevailing winds do not really, it's just a mixture of all the world's air pollution. It's literally the cleanest air. So the second cleanest air in the whole world is the Mauna Kea measuring site, which is why National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration established their readings there, is because it's the second cleanest air in the whole world, and by far the second cleanest air closest to scientists in the whole world. So they established that for a good reason, and it's worth noting that that number, that 410 reading, is a very, very high number. And we need to be aware that there's a lot we can do locally. Now, as to what some of the challenges are, one of them that I'll direct to the blue shirts, not to say that I'm ignoring the white shirts here, but the white on blue as opposed to blue on white shirts, I will say that I think there's a commitment for public engagement in the climate change plan. What I want to draw a distinction between is obviously having public involvement is better than not having public involvement, so that's good. But what I am concerned about, and what I want you to be raising or be on the alert for, is the idea that informed members, not to be confused with the public, but to be separate from the public, informed, knowledgeable members of the public in Lane County should be involved in some sort of steering committee, guidance committee, advisory committee, something that is more than just being present at a poster session. That, to me, is something for you to think about, and for that matter, for the board to think about in terms of the next time we have an update from the folks that are running the laboring oar on that. Oh, on the topic of remonstrance, I believe that's from Mason's legislative manual and not from a overall good source of knowledge like Google or Wikipedia. And so I'll just say, I'm not sure it is. I don't want to be quoted as it is, but a legislative procedure, the reason we have this remonstrance word is that one of our former commissioners, Commissioner Dwyer, who was in the legislature, I believe with both Commissioner Farr and me, Senator, former representative, former senator, former Commissioner Dwyer, he came on this board and he didn't always want to agree with everything that was set up here. He wanted to give his remonstrance like he did in the legislature, but it wasn't on the agenda. And so he insisted that those of us, I'll put myself in that category, see, it's not, I'm not always the board chair. Sometimes I'm not the board chair, and I'm down there on the other end, and maybe no one is agreeing with me. So the right of a protest comment from the minority, even though I'm currently in the majority, I really think that's an important component of this job. And who knows, if these guys keep saying they don't want a remonstrance, then I've really got a reason to be for a remonstrance. On the housing bond, as has been mentioned, there's no housing bond. There's an idea called a housing bond, and I think it's a good idea. And the idea is we should find out if the public agrees with us that housing is a big problem in Lane County, and it's such a big problem that we are asking people to dip into their wallets to pay for people that don't have housing. Now, is that all the statistics that were mentioned by Commissioner Buck are as to what level of dysfunctionality their housing budget is. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. What I do know is that we better find out what the public thinks about this before we get too far down the road. And that's why I think an early part of our housing work session will be questions about, well, what did people in Portland, what were they asked when they were asked to part with their money in a multi-million-dollar housing bond proposal that we might replicate in some ways. And secondly, we want to make sure that if there is public support for a certain level, be it $5 or 50 million or 500 million, whatever it is, and I have no idea what that would be. But I think that if we scale it the way Portland did, it would turn out to be about 50 million. But if public doesn't want to support that, then there's no point in talking more about it. If the public does want to support it, then we can talk about some of the issues that have been raised of the fairness between downtown Eugene housing needs versus Crestwell housing needs versus Cottage Grove housing needs versus Lowell housing needs versus West Eugene housing needs, et cetera. So to me, that's why I think it's important. Now, the agenda team, which is a group of people that the board appoints to help schedule all of our meetings, Commissioner Buck, myself, the county administrator, county council, and lots of other people meet every week. In fact, we met, was it today or in the middle of last night? No, it was at 8 o'clock. We meet at 8 o'clock on Tuesday mornings before board meetings. So we scheduled next week's board meeting. And my point is that we have not yet scheduled our housing work session, but we have it in the queue. We have it in the list of things we're going to be. And thank you, Commissioner Barney, for pointing out that we do have the work session, or we're calling it a joint work session, with the advocates and opponents of the ballot measures dealing with pesticide spraying in the forest and those types of things. We put up a whole bunch of legal materials on our website. We've also invited the proponents and opponents of the ballot measures to come, and they will be given time to advocate or not advocate on the 9 a.m. on October 16. So that's a work session in progress. We also built in plenty of time for commissioners to ask questions, and of course we have public comment the day before at our Tuesday meeting for anybody that wants to give us some ideas on what questions to ask. By the way, Mr. New, thank you so much for your timely comments about the plastic. You know, I went to a U of O football game a few years ago, and it was really a plastic, environment. A few years ago, I went to the Lane County Fair, and I appointed a young man to the Lane County Fair Board whose sole goal was to get rid of all the plastic at the Lane County Fair. He was only on the Fair Board for 4 years, and he finally gave up. So that is something that this board would not only want to ask other people about major events in the community about plastic, we'd like to ask that question about ourselves. And quite frankly, I forgot to ask that question today. We had a group in for the fair. It wasn't really the time to ask because we were thanking them for all their hard work in probably cleaning up a lot of plastic. But they did a great job. We had over 110,000 people at the Lane County Fair, so we did honor them today. But that's a good point, that we should be asking that question of ourselves. That is one of the largest single events in Lane County, the Lane County Fair. 110,000 people, about a third of the population of Lane County. So, okay, I've covered it. If I haven't covered your issue, please send me an email. And you're right, Ms., the woman from Springfield, your leader, what's her name? Is it Terry? Terry and I have exchanged quite a bit of email on this, and I really think that you guys have, as Commissioner Buck mentioned, you guys have really been pursuing it properly and, continue to provide the answers to the questions. I think that the need is so great. We see it all the time in terms of our overview of all these county programs, and it really starts with things like having a place to go every night and not being addicted to drugs and alcohol. And it's really, really important work you're doing, and people that come here with tremendous obstacles and have the courage to come here and tell us your story. It really means a lot. That's why we try to do these evening public comments. And we do have a few more left for the rest of the year. Do you know the dates? I'll just say they're on the website, and I think we're doing about one a month. Do you happen to know? In October and November. Yeah. Okay, so we have 2 more public comments in the evening between now and the end of the year. So if, for those of you who would otherwise have difficulty coming during our 9 o'clock public comment, please come in the evening. Okay, well, thank you. We will see you next time, and we're adjourned.